I'm Joyce Hornady. You might say accuracy is my business. I make bullets.
You are listening to the Hornady Podcast.
Thanks for joining us and enjoy the show.
On today's podcast, I have the unique opportunity to talk to a group of industry people that went to Tajikistan to hunt Mid-Asian Ibex. Now, some were successful, some weren't, but they all came home with wonderful stories of a marvelous adventure. I hope you guys enjoy this one as much as I did. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Hornady Podcast, where we talk everything outdoors, sports, shooting, you name it. If it's outside and if it's involving guns, that's what we're talking about. And we've got a great episode today. I'm joined by Marketing Director Neil Davies. Neil, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Seth.
Yeah, and I'm pretty excited about this one because this is a topic that most people don't even know is a thing that you can do, and we've got a great opportunity. You had an awesome opportunity to get out there and do some amazing stuff. Tajikistan is a country that most folks probably don't know is a country, let alone find it on the map.
Yeah, I would imagine. I mean, so we did a trip to Mid-Asia, basically. So we traveled as a group to Tajikistan, flew to Dushanbe, and then went to our camp, which was in the Darvos region, right across the river, the Panj River from Afghanistan, which is pretty interesting because it's right there. I mean, it's right there.
Well, most people know where that's at. So you weren't alone. You had some good guys going with you. So join me in welcoming on the show. We've got Ryan Trenka, Marketing Director for Leica, and then we've got David Draper and Craig Boddington, who join you guys on the hunt to capture it for video and editorial. Guys, thanks for coming on the show with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having us. And thanks for taking us all to Tajikistan, I guess. It was a great time.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah, it was quite a trip. I mean, podcast fashion, we'll probably bounce back and forth on a few things, but we assembled this group at not quite last minute, but kind of last minute. So, but I have to tell you that we got a great group of people. So, Ryan, Marketing Director over at Leica. Before that, Ryan has done many things in his life. He's filmed all over the world. He's done a lot of marketing stuff. He's hunted all over the place with a rifle, with a bow, and then obviously with the camera. David Draper, editor of Petersen Hunting. And this is what's very unique about this trip was that we had the past and the present editors of Petersen Hunting.
Oh, there we go.
Craig Boddington should need no introduction. Craig is hunted the world over. He's been writing for many, many years. And Conklin Award winner, Weatherby Award winner. If you'd like to know anything about international hunting, we have got the number one guy on here.
So wealths of knowledge here. Now, I'm going to rewind the clocks a little bit before we get jumping right into the event. And that is, I was at the FTW Ranch at a media event with Leica Sport Optics. That's where I first met Ryan. And he had mentioned something about organizing a trip like this. And I remember thinking, like, where in the hell is that? It's just crazy. So, guys, talk me through a little bit of how you find these hunts and what goes into that initial planning phase. Being, it's so far away from here. What goes into that?
Ryan had a big part to do with this. So, yeah, I mean, we have Ryan and I, and so Hornady and Leica, we work with a PR company that's actually based out of Scotland now. Tweed Media, Simon Barr, great guy. So we partner with some of these events to do these editorial events, and this one came about. We're looking for interesting backdrops to tell a fantastic story, and Tajikistan is obviously one of those backdrops. But Ryan, I'll let you take it away from there.
Well, it kind of happened in twofold. One, I'll have to admit, an Ibex was on the top of my bucket list. And so, selfishly, I was really looking forward to do something possibly, around an Ibex. But really, when Simon and I sat down at first and started talking about something like this, we wanted to do something that had a little bit of a wow factor. We could attract some, top end writers and have them on a hunt. But we first started looking at Alaska and Canada and some other places like that. And the costs to take a group like this were just way out of our budget at that point. And Simon had mentioned Ibex in Tajikistan, and that's one of the places I've never been, always wanted to go. And then when you really start putting pen to paper and looking at the cost, it was super cost effective. The adventure factor obviously was a wow, a 10 out of 10. And so we went, Simon knows you, Neil, from a long time ago. And we went to you guys and said, hey, is this something that you might be interested in? I think it just jumps off the paper, especially when you look at the cost involved. You're like, hey, we could do this for the cost of a big mule deer hunt in Western US. And so I was all over it. I jumped on it. I really wanted to go. It took a little bit of convincing to my bosses when I told them, hey, we're just across the river from Afghanistan. But I said, no worries, we're in good hands. So that's when we started, bringing on partners. Hornady was the first one, obviously.
Yeah, and we partnered with Forlo Apparel. So Forlo stands for For Love of Hunting. So we were outfitted with some of their kit to take on this trip, give it a thorough workout in pretty rugged conditions, which the apparel worked great. Optics are phenomenal, and this is an optics intense hunt. You are in big country.
Well, teamed up obviously with the right partner then.
Yes, precisely.
Now, Craig, is this your first time to Tajikistan, or have you been there before?
No, I've been there a couple times before. It's been a long time, really before our Afghanistan adventure for however many years. So, but I was there in the late '90s and again in the early 2000s. It's a wonderful little country, north of Afghanistan, just west of China. And it really is a great little country. It's best known for the Marco Polo sheep, really, but the ibex is a greatly underrated game animal. The thing that people don't understand is ibex are found in the same mountains as some of the big Argali sheep and as Markhor, and yet while those sheep are very unaffordable, ibex hunting is very reasonable. They're widespread, they're prolific, there's good numbers of them, and it's probably the great bargain in Asian hunting.
Wow. Now, David, is this your first trip to somewhere like that? And walk me through, if it was, what were your thoughts going in? What did you do to prepare for something like this?
I don't know if you can prepare for it. And funny enough is, I was on an original list to go, and for certain various reasons, I couldn't make it. So everyone was supposed to go, I think you guys were supposed to go in December, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Or November, and that trip fell apart because of COVID and everything else. And then suddenly, Neil called again and kind of called my bluff. And
called him out of the minors.
Yeah, exactly. So I got called up. And so I immediately went to the gym and got on the spin bike and started spinning it as often as I could.
Yeah, I started getting pictures of Draper on the spin bike and Craig hiking.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. And I don't think any of us quite knew, Craig's been there before, but I think he was in a lot higher altitude. So I think a lot of us thought it was going to be extreme high altitude, which it ended up not being quite as bad as we expected. So it was just, getting in shape for it. I think trips like this mentally for me, I'm typically ready to go on that type of stuff. Like, hey, here's a really cool hunt. And probably because the less I know about it, the better. I'm like, yeah, I'll do that because I don't know how bad it's going to be.
Ignorance is bliss.
And yeah, I'm very much lived my life that way. And everyone around me was very supportive. The Afghanistan border thing freaked out my mother, of course, but my girlfriend was all about it. She said, yeah, and maybe she has a life insurance policy on me. But, and just to speak to that, like when we say we were on the Afghanistan border, when you looked out of the window of the room we were staying in, all you could see was a big wall of the Afghanistan mountain. Yeah. That's how close we were.
Oh, wow.
I don't think we could have thrown a rock to Afghanistan. I don't have the arm for that, but
slingshot.
It wouldn't be very
You
much
can
fun.
slingshot
It's a
one over
rifle
there.
shot. Slingshot, 100%.
And for those who are listening to this that aren't familiar, Craig's a retired Marine Corps colonel, so he spent some time on both sides of that river. So did Seth, quite frankly. So
one side of the river.
One side of the river. Yeah, that's right.
Well, so before we get into more of the planning process, I want to talk about what bullet we were taking over there, because that, we've got a new bullet that we were using, or that we were pushing this year, and it really lends itself to exactly what this type of hunt is. Neil, what were you shooting?
We were shooting CX bullets. So this was a perfect opportunity to test these bullets. You're going to be in the, some of the most remote regions of the world. The CX bullet's a rugged bullet. It's a solid copper alloy projectile. If you have to fish a bullet up from behind the rib cage or from the front quarter, whatever you need to do, you're going to drive deep and hit the vitals. Mm-hmm. So this was a great opportunity for that. And we were also going to be faced with some longer ranges. So now we're going to test the capabilities of this projectile at those extended ranges, and not 300 and in. Most everybody had shots that were longer than that. So that's what everybody used. Craig, I think you had a 300 Win Mag, right?
I did. I had a 300 Win Mag with the 180 grain CX. And now, Ryan knew he was going, and Ryan had plenty of time to prepare. Neil, you prepared by going to the hospital and having back surgery.
Yes.
I didn't. I was not on the original group because that interfered with my Kansas whitetail season, and that is sacred and inviolable. So I was a late draft choice. So I prepared by sitting in a tree stand in Kansas and then going to a couple of conventions and having COVID in between. Yeah. So I was not exactly prepared. And so the CX that I used came in a plastic baggie.
Yeah.
And I personally mailed him.
I loaded them.
Craig's loaded a few rounds in his life. So,
Right.
yeah. Written a book
I loaded
or two
them
about
up
it
myself, and they worked just fine.
Yeah.
Excellent.
In fact, they worked great.
And David and Ryan, what were you guys shooting caliber-wise?
I was 300 Win Mag as well.
Yeah, I had a 300 PRC actually, so I really was looking forward to testing that out. And
Those 190s.
Oh yeah, it was an amazing bullet.
Yeah, well, to spoil it a little bit, spoiler alert here, the CX bullets, they worked really well. Craig was able to recover his 180 grain CX from his Ibex, and Preston, mark this one down. On the thumbnail of this one, we need to incorporate the picture of that specific bullet. I have it in my office, and it is just an absolute picture-perfect example of what a monolithic hunting bullet should look like upon recovery. It's just remarkable. So,
and over 99% of weight.
Yeah, I mean, it retained all of it. It lost the polymer tip. So, all right, so that's the bullet we're using. The stage is set. You guys are shooting. You're training a little bit. And now to get to the place where you're hunting, not even to go hunting, what is that travel like? That's got to be a monumental task to get during COVID, from central Nebraska, let's say, halfway around the world. And what's that like? How do you, where do you go through that? And what's it like traveling with a firearm through some of these countries?
We should probably explain to everybody that so we went at the end of February. I think the season ended the last day of February, if I remember correctly. So that was the last possible time that our licenses would be valid.
Okay.
So we had this editorial trip planned for December. And like Craig said, he wasn't on the original list, just the way things were then. So we had a group of riders, and Ryan, you were going as well. Maybe some other folks were going to go. I had a back surgery November 3rd. That's how I prepared to go to Tajikistan. Not the best way to do it. Anyway, so I couldn't go in December. There's no way. Unfortunately, what had happened is everybody made it to Houston and found out that the flight from, correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, but the flight from Istanbul to Dushanbe, Tajikistan was canceled due to COVID stuff, because that was when one of the variants had flared up and there was all these things going on. And now Jason Hornady had actually gone ahead of this group. So it turns out Jason was the only guy in camp, and it should have been like 6 people. And our friend Simon Barr, who helped organize this thing, was going to go and photograph and help with videography. But Byron Pace went, who works with Simon. He's a freelancer, and Simon at the time had COVID, so he couldn't travel. And obviously this all happened in the time of COVID, which, as everybody's watching this can recall, it's just painful. Mm-hmm. So fast forward now, COVID thing, all that stuff kind of straightened out. International travel is kind of starting to kick back up, and I'm back in the game. I'm healthy enough. Brian's ready to go. We organized such that we could get some other writers to represent some of these publications to come, and I did call David's bluff, and Craig went on behalf of NRA Publications. So now the stage is set. We've got this great assortment of people, and we're ready to go. And Ryan had some experience with this. The booking the trip, you fly. I suppose you can get there from different places, but we were going from Istanbul. And the way that it works is your connection from Istanbul to your flight to get to Dushanbe is maybe a little tight. So it's probably best to spend the night and then leave the next day from Istanbul.
Okay.
Which turned out to be a great experience, because we linked up with a con over there, and Istanbul for Hunters is the company that he has and he operates, and he does some tourist package where he will pick you up and you have dinner, and then the next day you go on a tour. I'll let you guys jump in there, because I thought that was a pretty interesting experience.
Yeah, tie that onto the hunt.
Yeah, I was really worried about, because that flight from Istanbul to Dushanbe only operates once every 4 days.
Yeah.
So if you miss that flight, you're going to miss 4 days of your hunt. And so it was wise for us to leave a day early. And we got into Istanbul. They picked us up. They took care of our luggage and our guns and stored it in a secure place, because getting a gun permit in Turkey was difficult. And if you left the airport with your rifles, you had to have a gun permit. So they took care of all that. It was very, very inexpensive. And then the next day we got a fabulous tour of Istanbul, which is one of the most historic cities, that's half in Europe, half in Asia. I'd never experienced that. And I did. Craig said, and David, actually, you lived there, didn't you?
I spent a few weeks there. I didn't live there, but I basically did. I rented a little Airbnb in Istanbul and just chilled out.
That's
and
cool.
Smoked hookah pipe every afternoon, drank beer, and watched the Bosphorus go by. That's what I do for fun. Yeah. But yeah, like you said, just a historic city, the crossroads of the world. Everything's been through there. It has so much history in it, and it's just amazing to see. So I was actually super excited about the 24 hours in Istanbul. I got up like at 5 a.m. and just walked Istanbul by myself just because it's a cool city.
I think of that 24 hours in Istanbul, we crossed from Europe to Asia and back again about 4 times, seeing different sites on both sides of the Bosporus. So it was fantastic.
Yeah, crossing continents.
Yeah, it was an interesting experience. We got to tour the city. Akan put us through this great program. We went to see some of the I forget how to pronounce it. The Hagia Sophia, is that the correct pronunciation of that?
Yes.
So, which is an old church turned mosque turned church. It went back and forth depending on who was in power. And then we went to see the newest mosque in town. Went downtown, saw a lot of the old ruins, and then the thing that amazed me the most was that this is a foreign place for a lot of people, and it's in a part of the world where, just like these guys are saying, the East meets West. And you're looking at the people all over the place when you're in kind of a common area. It was like being in a scene from the original Star Wars bar scene. You know what I mean? Where everybody looks so different. Everybody. Yeah, exactly. So yeah.
Well, that's neat that you got to kind of enrich yourself in some of the culture that most people in the U.S. don't get to experience, and that was just on your way there.
Yeah.
So you get to Dushanbe, and then you get picked up at the airport and trucked to hunting camp. What was that like?
Well, it's when you travel internationally to some of these countries, sometimes you just have to trust the outfitter. Now, this is a very established outfitter. I'd never dealt with these guys before. Ayub Moliyorov from M. Soyod Hunting. The hunt was originally booked through Profi Hunt, and these are verified, excellent folks that know what they're doing. But you don't know them, and you show up in the airport a lot of times, and you just hand your passport over blindly to people, and your passport disappears. And but boy, before you know it, you're drinking coffee. Hour or so later, passports come back to you, rifle cases come out, everything's fine. So
they make it pretty easy on you guys, and it sounds like you said, Neil, that the outfitter, they've done this before.
Yeah.
They're there to take care of you. They have a reputation. You did some homework. I'm guessing Ryan did a little bit of homework, obviously, with Simon. Got a verified this group knows what they're doing. They're going to give you the best experience. And that little bit of homework obviously pays off.
It's just going to be it's kind of, and Craig's done this.
Sure.
I don't even know how many times in his hunting career.
On a weekly basis.
But, you just kind of sometimes have to do what you need to do. But yeah, your passport goes to somebody and you don't see it for a while, but you do trust that it's going to come back to you. It's just how it works in these places.
But you take that one variable out. I know a lot of people are so scared to do a hunt like this because of those little things.
Yeah.
And that if you can reassure them and take that one thing out of their mind, like, hey, he's going to meet you there. He's going to take care of this. Just relax and focus on the other part of it. Because you're going 12 time zones away. You're tired. It's the middle of the night. And having that reassurance from somebody that you can trust, it's a big deal. It was a really big deal, especially a group like this. We wanted to make sure everybody's taken care of. And in the end, it worked out perfectly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with Ryan. Like, that's always, and Craig can really speak to this, the times I've done it in my life where you just have to hand your passport, usually in the middle of the night in a foreign airport, to somebody you don't even know. It can be unnerving, but you just put faith in it, and you do your research ahead of time so you know you're someone reputable. And Craig does it like on a weekly basis, it seems like. Every time I talk to Craig, he's going somewhere else. So
the hunt to Central Asia is kind of a big deal now. That's a big deal. It's Ibex is not an expensive hunt, but a hunt Central Asia is not really a hunt. It's an expedition.
Yeah.
And you have to understand that. But you have to start out with a lot of blind faith.
That's a good way to put it, though. I'm glad you said that. Yeah, an expedition, because typically, just small town Nebraska kid, I hear expedition, I immediately think you're going to Africa on a safari. But, this high mountain, very steep country type mid-Asian hunt really is an expedition. And that's a good way to put it.
And you just have to slow down. You're not on American schedule. You're definitely not on your schedule. Things are going to be what they're going to be. And when you get to camp, the weather's going to be what it's going to be. But yeah, just, okay, I'm going to hand the guys that are meeting me at the airport, they want my passport because they're going to use my passport to get the firearm, to get my luggage. They're being compensated for this. So they trust me, they don't want to have any problems with anybody there. They also are there a couple times a month picking up hunters and doing this stuff. So they know the customs officials and, all that stuff. So that they help you navigate that whole system. But there's not a whole tremendous amount of English that's going back and forth between the two. So So it's kind of different. But that's just the way it's done. But anyway, long story short, rifles come out, they pick us up. You arrive pretty early in the morning, like 2 or 3 in the morning from Istanbul. So it was dark when they picked us up. Now we get in these SUVs, which, I think we had a, very nice Lexus SUV and a Toyota Land Cruiser or something like this. So very nice vehicles. And then we head out for 4 or 5 hours through Tajikistan over to where we're going to be hunting. Got to see just a little bit of the culture as day was breaking. We did have to stop at 6 a.m. or whenever it was that the sun rose for one of our drivers because he's a very devout Muslim and he needed to pray. And then we drove into camp. So, but yeah, it's definitely an interesting sight as you see the different architecture and the written language is obviously different. Cyrillic, right? Cyrillic? I believe it's Cyrillic.
Yeah, a lot of it was in Cyrillic.
Yeah, so just a fascinating place.
So what's it like when you finally get to camp and you get to set your bag down and stuff? What's the camp like before you get to hunting? Did you feel a level of comfort like, okay, I'm home, this is home now, I can get my stuff, get my poop in a group? Did you get to sight the rifles in before going up on the mountain?
I'll let these guys deal with this one.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, the very first thing we saw when we pulled into camp, or at least I noticed it, was a Markhor deadhead in a pot, like right camp. Markhor is a dream hunt for anyone that's out of reach for most people financially. I mean, it's very few people get a hunt Markhor in the world, and there's just a deadhead laying there in camp. So I knew we were in the right place when I see a Markhor deadhead just kicking around the yard. Put something for the dog to chew on, I guess.
Well, I'd been dreading the road trip. I really had been, because I did that 25 years ago, and oh my gosh, the roads are a heck of a lot better today.
Yeah.
The road trip was quick. 4 hours, and 4 hours from the airport we were in camp, maybe a little more, but it was really a very, very pleasant drive. And we pull into camp, and there's a Markhor that was taken by a snow leopard looking at us. And but the camp was a 2-story farmhouse.
Okay.
It had running water, very comfortable, and my experience in Central Asia, this was a great camp.
Yeah.
Very comfortable, nice and warm and snug.
Excellent. So that's what camp's like. Now you get there, and I'm going to kick this ball over to Ryan here. Ryan might have to leave a little bit early on us, so I want to get as much of his experience documented here as I can. So Ryan, you get there, you get settled into camp. What's your hunting experience like? You get up on the mountain. What did you experience? What was the weather? What was the steepness like? What was the elevation like? How much game were you seeing? What optics of yours were you putting to use the most? Walk us through all that.
Well, we got there. We all had a variation of a Leica scope. I think everybody was running either a 3-18 by 44 in minutes, or I think Craig had a 2.5 by 15 by 56 in mils. So we're running the new ampliscopes. I had new Geovid Pro binoculars. Immediately when you drive into camp, all you do is look up. The only thing below you is the river. And otherwise, everything is straight up. And we weren't at an altitude that most people would be shocked at, but the vertical nature of where you're standing strikes anybody as, okay, whoa. Where's the horses? Where's the escalator? Where's the Jeep? So immediately you're questioning your sanity there. And when we got there, the camp was awesome. We got the rifles sighted in right away. We got to demonstrate, our proficiency out there. We found a rock 500, boom. Everything's set up good. Bullets are working well. And we're just really looking forward to getting out. being a fairly large group, we had to split up and everybody had their own areas. I think, Craig went one direction and then David went, I think, about the furthest away you could get from camp in our hunting area. I'll let them comment, but I think they had an opportunity to drive up a little bit, but then it's just all on foot. The one thing I was there, I left right from the farmhouse. We put on our packs, walked out the front door, and they said, "That's where we're going." And they just pointed up. So we just, it was blind faith. You're leaving at, anywhere between 2:30 in the morning till 6, and it's just up. And then that's all you think about is just go up. You're in the rocks. At this point, you really need good gear. And one foot in front of the other. You could doubt yourself the first 15 minutes, say you can't do this, but you just go and you rely on them and they help you out. I mean, they wanted to carry everything for you if you needed to, but you just go up. And the weather quickly changed. The day we sighted in the rifle, sunny, warm, windy. Next day, the rain came and then the snow. So, that's where you got to let the mental part of it take over and say, hey, we'll get out. I didn't personally see a ton of Ibex. We started to see some way up. I saw more Markhor where I was than I did Ibex. I probably saw 200 Markhor, which is crazy for me. I mean, coming from a conservation background, I'd never laid eyes on a Markhor outside of Texas. I was just blown away. I mean, literally just you sat on a rock and thought, I can't believe I'm looking at a Markhor. So it was magical in that sense. Even when the snow was coming down and we were in a cave waiting and get very wet, I was still blown away that we were there.
It sounds like just the initial experiences of obviously the preparation and a little bit of stress there and the travel and then the culture of being in Turkey, and you get there and you're immersed in this totally different world, and then you're faced with some inclement weather and some hellacious climbs, and you still just can't wrap your head around that this is real life. And you're in a cave in Tajikistan waiting out a snowstorm. That's just...
But they get in. So
changes
I mean,
your perspective.
we would start at about. I think the camp was about 3,000 feet.
Okay.
And then you climb up from there. You might drive to a location where you might start, but then it's all on foot, and you go from there. On my Kestrel, I think as far as I can recall, the highest I got was like 62 or 300 or 400 feet, whereas Ryan got up to like 8,500, I think.
You're just shy of 9,000 feet.
And but it's just straight up. And so like I said, I had a back surgery in November. It's a long story, but anyway, so I had a back surgery, so my preparation was not intense. Some swimming here and there, but ultimately you can do it. You just put one foot in front of the other, and the mantra that they would keep repeating is slowly, because you'll get there. Yeah. But you just have to keep trucking, and your brain is going to tell you that you can't do this, but guess what? Your body can. So just keep going. Yep. And in some spots, you do have to keep going because you either go up or you go down. That's it, because there's no helicopter coming. Yeah, but I mean, I don't know, Ryan, you've been all over. Craig, David, you guys have been all over the place. I mean, in my experience, this terrain was pretty harsh. I don't want to turn people off from doing this trip because you can do this, but it was a little more harsh than I've experienced in the Alps or even in New Zealand. I mean, it was pretty rugged.
Well, I've hunted a lot of the different Ibex in various ranges, and it was probably the most abrupt Ibex country I've ever seen. Yeah. In fact, I was knowing I wasn't really in proper shape for it. I got to tell you, I was horrified when I saw it because I knew I wasn't really in shape for the trip. Now, I don't know if they took the old man up the easiest valley or if I just got lucky, but I didn't have to climb some of the places where you young puppies had to climb. So I did get lucky. There's no question about that. You worked a lot harder for yours than I did for mine, but it was challenging. You bet.
David, what was your experience? Yeah.
So, I think I felt the worst for Ryan because when you looked out the back door of the lodge, it was straight up. And that's where he was hunting from day one. I hunted kind of all over, bounced around. Mine was like the first day I followed a riverbed for quite a while, and then we cut off on a creek bed that started ascending. So I didn't have like brutal climbing. I mean, it was still fairly tough, but it wasn't straight up. It was, it was gradual climb over some pretty rough, rocky, like riverbeds with big rocks. So, I mean, I was still kind of hands and feet climbing at times and stuff like that. And then, going after the Ibex once we spotted them was, kind of a straight up proposition, but it wasn't straight up out of the gate like Ryan. And then after Craig cleared his valley, I went into his valley one day and it was a nice stroll, but there was still, and I've seen the video since, Craig, you're not giving yourself enough credit. You did some climbing and I had to do some climbing in that valley too. So, and I know Neil called it like Narnia or something, like Middle Earth, I guess.
Or Middle Earth.
Photos from that valley you were in, Neil, is amazing. That little crevice, that cut in the rock where you guys were going down the middle of it. That was unbelievable. Yep. Like that country just blows my mind. But it is, I agree, it is the most rugged country I've ever hunted. It's similar in like straight up nature to some places I've been in New Zealand where you just kind of go and you go straight up from there, or straight down in New Zealand. But New Zealand's not as rugged and rocky as
it sounds. Just in the short talk that we've had so far, you have to have, a great gun, great bullet, great ammo, great optics, great gear. You went from sunny and warm to it's snowing, it's raining, and then we didn't mention boots. It sounds like if you're that rugged, that steep, that much scree, that much rock, you need a incredibly stiff boot, I would guess.
I would, yeah. I mean, that was my experience, and I had some really rugged boots, and they were what you needed. And we all have different levels of mountain climbing boots, but you wouldn't be wrong with some of the most technical mountain boots you could find, to be fair.
Wow. Yeah.
No, and we were lucky too in that we didn't have a lot of ice.
Yeah,
Okay.
True.
Oddly enough, and I was concerned about the weather this late in the year, or this early in the year, and truth is, it was early spring in Tajikistan.
Yeah, which was weird because Craig and I drove around for once Craig and I had tagged out. We drove around the next day and we dropped some elevation. And when we did, you could notice clearly that there's grass growing and the trees were budding and there's flowers and things like this. But that's probably why they have an inversion layer, it seems like. So we got trapped in the lodge for a day or two, day and a half at least. Craig ended up killing his Ibex on one of the rain days. But for the rest of us, we couldn't go out because it's not that it was dangerous necessarily, but you can't see. Yeah. But once you get up in those clouds, okay, well, now you've got moisture. It's a cloud. It's nothing but water, right? So you've got either snow or dew or something like that. So it got pretty wet, but it was like an inversion layer that would come in. So you just you're playing that game with the clouds. And when they were up and high and you could see, boy, it's game on. But when the clouds were low, because those Ibex are living pretty high. And I believe that part of that is because that where those clouds are, there's maybe they're up high enough to where there's some dirt on top of these little ridges and things, and there's actual grass up there. Whereas on the side of the mountain, it's just rock.
Just rocks,
nothing for them.
Yeah, well, these guys were down low looking at flowers and grass. I was stuck in a little ice cave with snow up to my waist, wishing I was down. No.
Talking to God. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of you guys got into very, very deep snow, but I really did not. I got into snow, but not the deep snow. So again, that's luck of the draw.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'll say, like Neil talked about the rain, Tuesday, the days get mixed up, but day 2, we, the three of us, Ryan and Neil and I, got stuck in the lodge. They came and got Craig because they found an Ibex in that valley that they could get to when the fog wasn't too low. So I went in that valley the next day while Ryan and Neil got stuck in the lodge. I got to go out, and I just want to say the very first Ibex I ever saw in the wild, the clouds parted. And it was there, and they're like, "That's the one we got to kill." And then the clouds just closed back up, and I never saw it again. But it was pretty cool and he was standing on a promontory like a commercial, like it was a right out of brochure. Just the clouds parted, and there he was, beautiful. And then before I could get a shot, he disappeared.
Oh, wow.
But it was amazing. I'll never forget that scene I hope that's like what I see on my deathbed is when it's all the life flashing before my eyes. I hope that's one of the things cool. I see is that Ibex standing there.
That's really cool.
That is pretty remarkable, and I think some people who haven't hunted with an outfitter or internationally, they might have a clouded view that it's kind of a fish in a barrel the thing. But you guys were the exact opposite. This was an absolute hunt. From hearing Neil's recap here in the office, you guys grounded out. It took a lot of perseverance between the climbing and the weather and soreness and this, that, and the other thing. Mentally, it was a very challenging hunt. Ryan, walk us through the culmination of your hunt, if you will, because sounds like you killed a really stellar representation of what a Mid-Asian Ibex is.
Ryan not only killed a giant, but he stuck it out and hunted that same Ibex the entire week. So my hat's off to you, brother.
Okay.
No, we weren't there looking for the biggest or the best. I was just trying to get lay my hands on one of the horns. They'd seen this Ibex in a high mountain valley for years, literally years, and they couldn't ever get to it. And they said, let's go try for this. And we hunted the same Ibex the entire week. Finally, the last day of hunting, full day of hunting, we just decided to kind of launch into the void, so to speak, and leave earlier and colder. And I just said, if we're going to do this, let's just do this. Let's not mess around and try to get across from him at 700-800 yards. We have to cross another valley and get up into the cliffs that they'd really never been. And we did it. We were supposed to leave at 2. I went to bed. Neil woke me up and said, hey, you got till 3 or 2:30, an extra half hour or something. So got up and we just took off, and it was dark. And that day was real cold, clear skies. You knew there wasn't going to be any rain. I think it was 8 degrees Fahrenheit. And we just climbed and and just kept going. We wanted to get as close as we could in the dark. And then we got finally up to about 7,000, 8,000 feet, found where they were. Then we had to descend about 3,500 feet to a valley straight down, kind of what Neil was walking in the Middle Earth, and then go up the other side to try to get above our Ibex. And that was at the point where they'd never been on that side, and it was just all cliffs. It was just cliffs. And we just started climbing straight up, kind of cliff band to cliff band to cliff band, trying to get above these Ibex. And they bed down, they feed, then they go, and then they bed down for quite a while. So we were just trying to get them before they got up. And we finally got to close to 9,000 feet, and we knew we should be at the same height. So the guide and I kind of descended in some cliffs and got around, and we got overlooking this big basin. And I was ranging everything. I had my gun set up. We knew we should be within 500 yards, the whole basin. If they were there and they came out, I was going to get a shot. That was the point where I was kind of giggling to myself, and I knew, okay, I'm ready. I'm prepared. My gun's on. I had dope for every rock in the valley.
Yeah.
And then finally a female just kind of came out. A female came out, and my guide was female. And then I picked out the rock that I was hoping he would step out onto, and he literally walked out and then put his head down, started eating about 425 yards.
Oh, wow.
Little angle compensation. And he just kept saying, big. And I didn't even get him a chance to ask me how far. And I let one rip and put a perfect shot. And he locked up, and he was going to go down, but I brought 60 rounds with me. And so I'm like, what's one more round? So I gave him another one. And then he fell, and he just fell into the void again. I was like, oh man, this could be bad. But at that point they were so excited. I knew we'd get to him, and then getting to him and then getting back home was probably as much of an adventure, because they'd never been out into that basin and tried to figure out a way down and then back up and then back down to so it ended up being a 18, 20-hour day, something like that. But it was one of those experiences that you just have to tell yourself, you can do anything, the body can handle anything, just go and just do it. And I think you could have an easier day and a harder day, but it was just what it is.
Man, that right there is such an experience. I mean, I can't even wrap my head around one, being there and hunting as hard as you guys were, and then all the hiking and the grind of it. And then to just, you just got to throw caution to the wind and unhook the plow and just go after them. And to have that come out in your favor, 12 time zones away had to be so rewarding at the end of that 20-hour day, or like hiking back and you see the vehicle, or you see your ranch house that you get to stay in, and to see that from a mile away or 100 yards away or whatever, and to finally, close the chapter on that particular part of the book, that had to be just life-changing almost. I mean, because it's such a departure from a normal day-to-day life and a normal, quote-unquote, American hunting experience that I can't even wrap my head around it.
Yeah, on one of the days when I was hunting, we'd made it into a position in Middle Earth, and so we went up this giant boulder-strewn river valley. It's picturesque, but it's like doing giant stair-stepper machine for 3 miles. And we got up to the top of this valley, and then up on the cliff up top was that, I didn't find them. The guides found the ibex. And I got to tell you, an ibex, it looks like rocks. They are incredibly camouflaged in that terrain. They were giants. There were 2 really big ibex, and didn't shoot them, didn't even try to put a stalk on them. Decided that the next day we're going to go back out, and then we're going to climb up this other side. But regardless, that was, without taking a shot, that was one of, if not, it was definitely one of the highlight days of my hunting career. And at that point in time, we shoot one, great. If we don't, I don't care. This has been an amazing experience, just because it's so tough to get up in the backcountry here and to get to where these things live, then to see these giant animals and understand that they're just, got eagle eyes and look like rocks. They're just incredibly difficult to hunt. But it's also the experience with the people and the guides and the rest of the crew that makes it very enriching. Because we're there hunting, of course, but the guys that are guiding us, those people are superhuman, and they are tremendous people.
Yeah, it sounds like it. The way that they can get up into those mountains, and they have a life outside of hunting. So if they've got any livestock that's getting out in there, they're going to retrieve their livestock, sheep or what have you, and that's just their way of life. So yeah, their legs and feet, ankles, and all the stuff that holds you together has to just be.
Yeah, we'd be wearing some really high-end technical boots and apparel, and then you'd have a guy wearing a pair of rubber boots climbing up the mountain like he's got suction cups for feet. So yeah, it puts everything in perspective. But those folks, I asked Odile, who is my head guide, I said, how long has your family been here? It's a somewhat rhetorical question because I presumed I knew the answer, but thought about it for a minute. It's like forever. They've just been there forever, and they through the millennia or however long their families have been there, they've been sheep and goat and cattle and whatnot. And once a sheep goes over the top of a mountain, you need to go fetch it. Well, you got to find your way up over there to go get it and bring it back. And so they know some of the ins and outs of how to climb up some of these places, which as just a layman, looking at the thing, you'd think it's impassable, but it's passable.
Wow. Yeah. Superhuman. So Ryan obviously had an amazing experience from start to finish and with a dandy, I don't know, Mid-Asian Ibex. I guess that's what you'd call it. I don't know how to.
Well, you're looking for
accurately score them.
They kind of want them to be somewhere around 100 centimeters, which is a meter, right? So that's about 40 inches. That's kind of where they want to. This is a good one.
Okay.
Well, I think Ryan was yours 122, something like this, 122 centimeters.
Right at 48 on a side.
Yeah, so that's
huge.
Wow.
I didn't know, and I talked about it, and then Craig started talking about sizes, and Neil pulls out the tape measure that night in the middle of the night, and Craig's like, that's a dandy. And that's when I kind of was like, realized, wow, that's a really big ibex.
Yeah, it's great to have Craig there because, I'm a rookie at this. Everybody else is pretty much a rookie, but Craig's done this before. So it's great. He could tell us what we're after and what we're doing, which is fantastic.
Awesome. Now, Craig, you said it sounds like you might have been the first one in the group to tag out. So what was that particular part of the hunt like? How'd that go down for you, and where'd you find him, and the shot distance and shot angle? How'd that all happen?
Well, I think we saw the ibex I shot on the first day. We saw perhaps some of the big ibex that you saw in that same valley, David, but same deal. They were very high and just had a brief window in the clouds, and the guides theorized that we might be able to get up there with about a 6-hour climb. Now, that's not to say I could have got up there in 6 hours, but they thought we could have got there, but we had no direction on what the ibex were doing or where they were going up, going down, and totally lost in the fog after just seconds. So we had really no choice but to say, well, not those ibex today. Then late in the afternoon, the ceiling went up just a little bit, and 2 ibex came down out of the clouds, and they were, about 1,000 yards above us, and they came out onto a rocky point and bedded down, and one was obviously young, and one was a good ibex. Very, very heavy, nice shape, not the longest, certainly nothing like the one that Ryan shot, but a good Ibex. That was the first day. We really had no way to get in on them. We were in the clouds, and there wasn't much cover between us and them, so we really had no choice but to walk away from them. And we watched them until dark, hoping they might come down a little further, but they didn't. And I kind of think that's the one I shot a couple days later. Very nice Ibex. It was in a position where they did come down quite far, and we were able to get up there and get underneath them. Of course, when we got there, they were nowhere to be seen. And so I set up, and I was set up on a boulder initially, and I didn't like the setup. It was very, very steeply uphill. And so I saw kind of a sloping mound of gravel off to the right, and I crawled over there and got the pack set up and got the bipod over the pack and was able to lay prone where I'm looking up. And then the waiting game, and I was on the gun for quite a long time. And then the smaller Ibex came out and stood on the skyline and waited a little bit more, and I'd taken a lot of breaks to rest my back and neck. But finally, the bigger Ibex came out and stood on the skyline, and I think it was the same one we saw the first day. Didn't have to be, but he was very heavy, nice shape, and certainly plenty long enough. And but he was facing directly to me. Now the shot was not far as this stuff goes. It was 300 yards, a little more. But I had the Leica system dialed in. I was very, very confident in it. And normally on a shot at that distance, I would not dial. I know how to handle a 300-yard shot with a fast 30, but I wanted to use the Leica system, so I let the Geovid Pro give me the correction, and I dialed. It was a minor correction because I'm shooting very, very, very steeply uphill. It wasn't a very big correction, but I made the correction and waited him out. There wasn't much wind, so I was okay with a facing shot, but not great. So waited quite a while, hoping he would turn and things would get a little bit better. And he took a step to his left, so he's facing downhill, quartering to me. It's still a strong quartering shot, which is the only reason we were able to recover the bullet. And Neil, forgive me, but I wasn't really thinking about recovering the bullet when I took the shot. But he took one step and opened up, and I could see that great big, broad, burly shoulder. And I thought, well, that's plenty enough. Mm-hmm. And so I shot him on the point of the on shoulder, and we recovered the bullet pretty much in the off hip. So, perfect penetration. At the shot, he turned. You could see him take the bullet hard. He turned and went over the ridge to his left, my right, and so Alex was there, kind of acting as interpreter, and we kind of looked at each other, and I was pretty sure of the shot. Now, some of the Tajik guides were down the valley, and they had a much different perspective, so they had actually seen him go down, and he didn't go 10 yards and went straight down, but we couldn't see that. The Tajiks could, so there were no congratulations until they got up to me, and then there was plenty of handshaking and much happiness, and then we had to figure out how to get my tired old self up to him.
It's like, oh, great. Oh, shoot,
now
I got to get over there. Yeah, another climb.
Yeah. That's and again another amazing experience, and it's odd, to say that your 300+ yard shot was short as far as this game is concerned, and that speaks.
Well, I had on that day that I went up that boulder-strewn valley. I remember ranging these Ibex, and I think they were 1,300 yards, but it was at like some crazy angle, like 40-something degrees.
Oh, wow.
It's just so. It's just everything's vast there.
Yeah, incredible. So, two really successful parts of the hunt there. David, as I understand it, not quite as successful in this particular part of it. Still an amazing opportunity, but talk us through your days hunting in those mountains.
Yeah, I've gone over this shot every night in the wee hours.
I'm sorry to bring it up again.
Days, so I've got it memorized, so I could go ahead and go over it. But again, amazing experience. A lot of what hunting is to me at my age now is the experience. Obviously, I want to be successful, not just for the story, but just because you want to be successful. But also, to me, this hunt, and Neil and I have talked about it, and we talked about it there too. It looks like Ryan had to go, but life-changing. It really was. I did not know I could do some of the things I could. On the fourth day of the hunt, or fifth, but it all kind of runs together, we had climbed really high. We climbed in the dark that day, and I'm pretty sure if it would have been light, I wouldn't have made that climb, because I would have been scared out of my wits, because it was I could tell it was a drop-off, but it was dark, so I don't know how far the drop-off was. So we got up there. The Ibex weren't where we thought they were going to be, but he thought they were going to be over the next one, which meant dropping all the way down and all the way back, a rock slide straight up. And I never would, like, if I was by myself, I would have said, I can't do that. But you can do it. Like you said, you just put your one foot in front of the other. You take breaks when you need to take breaks. I've always said on hunts like that, like, I'm the hunter. The guide can get up there as quick as he can, but if I'm not there to shoot it doesn't do any good. So I'll get there when I get there, and if the sheep's not there, the Ibex isn't there, we'll find another one, like, hopefully. So we took our time up that rock slide, got up there and didn't find him. But the sad part of the story, which is you keep bringing up and make me talk about, is
therapy.
So again, on the third day, I think we were fogged in, and they came and got me and said, hey, we got an Ibex. We think that it's down low enough. We'll be able to get there. Got to it. The clouds parted. Like I said, he was standing on a promontory, just perfect. Clouds closed, and we saw him going up a rock wash. So we climbed up above him. We saw the ewes all bedded down, and we thought the ram, we could kind of see the top of a ram, probably was that ram on the other side of a cliff. We could see his horns, but that was all. So we just sat with him all day. I mean, literally we were on just over the knife edge and just kind of camped out there all day, had snacks, and watched. I'd poke my head up every half hour, or the ewes were all still bedded, or one ewe would get up and walk around and then bed back down, and we could see him moving his head around. And we thought only matter of time. At the end of the day, he'll pop up, come to where his ewes are, and it'll be done. And that would have been like 180-yard shot, completely doable.
Oh, yeah.
Just right across a nice little bowl. Perfect. Good. I had good layout there. I knew it'd be a good shot. But, I mean, everything, sun went down, and he just never came back over. His ewes kind of all went in different directions, and he just must have followed a different one. So then, you just gotta go do it the next day. So walked down the valley and, came back and had a great dinner and all told our stories. I think Craig's still be the only one that killed that day. Neil, did you kill on the third day or fourth day? Day 4?
We had,
I think, because Ryan killed on day 5.
I think it was day. So we had kind of 2 days in camp. So we had the first day we went out, which is kind of when I think the guides are kind of judging you.
Oh, yeah, field judging.
Yeah, they're seeing what you're capable of.
That definitely was like a test walk. Yeah. You could tell. Like
first day, and it's
Italian
not. It wasn't
march.
that it wasn't. On the way back down, I was like, holy cow! For a guy with a back surgery, I can't believe I made it up this stuff. But that's a test day. And then I think the next day and a half we were kind of locked in. So 3, 4, maybe the 5th day. I can't recall, either 4th or 5th day that I ended up.
Yeah, it must have been because it. Yeah, you're right. So I guess day 4, we went back up that same valley, camped out under the same rock that Craig camped out under, because I saw in the video since then. Then I was like, oh, that place looks familiar. I had a campfire and we ate some nice. The bread there was delicious. That we had, this flat bread that was made in the local village, and some sausage grilled over the fire. It was a leisurely day. I actually every day was a wonderful picnic.
Yeah,
and they'd kind of, what they'd do is they'd kind of set you up where you could glass, and then they'd kind of, the assistant guides would kind of go out hiking and try to find, maybe there's Ibex somewhere, and then they'd come back and reconvene and figure it out. So one of the guys came back and said, hey, Ibex up this little canyon, let's go get him. So we get in this little tight canyon, and it started, the Ibex, we knew where they were in front of us, but they just must have been kept moving, because he had just seen them there not too long before. So we just kept hiking up this valley, got tighter and tighter, snowier and snowier, post holing through hip deep snow, and underneath the snow is a boulder field. So, you go down to your hip one step, and the next step you're on top of a rock.
That is really hard, wasn't it? I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but holy cow, that you can't prepare for that. That is just, it's like if anybody's ever gone duck hunting and walked in super thick mud and just found out that it never, this snow is bad like that.
Just switch the brain off and keep walking.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we never knew where the Ibex were, so it was like stalking unseen game. You're like, I know it's here, but where? So you'd hike a little bit, get around another little corner, glass, wasn't there. Glass, wasn't there, hike more, and finally we could see him on this little ridge. I got in position, but they were 5 of them together. I just saw their butts, and they went over the ridge. So we shed our packs, me and the head guide, and then Byron, the photographer, was with me. So I shed my pack. I was sweating like a dog because I sweat at relatively low temperatures anywhere, plus out of shape. So I'm drenched in sweat. Shed our packs and just take the rifle, and we're going to put on a pretty, belly crawl almost stalk up to this spot because we saw him go over the ridge. But then one of the other assistant guys a little higher, and he said that they were bedding just over this ridge. So we're like, okay, they're bedded. We're going to peek over this corner. They're going to be right there. So sure enough, we get up there, and they're gone, nowhere to be seen. Like, I don't know if they knew we were there or they just bugged out or what. So we're sitting there for a while, not sure what to do. Probably 300 yards from the pack, and the other two guys stayed behind too. This was just the three of us did the stalk on it. And then one of the other assistants guys got up behind us and got high, and he could see him over this big promontory right in front of me. Like, I could see to my right, and then I could see a cliff to my left, and then right in front of me was a big rock. And they were just over that. And they started feeding out into this field at about 400 yards, but it was real brush field, so there was no shot there. So we just watched them, and they came over and fed for a really long time at 450 yards. And there was just a rock right above me that was flat, so I had my rifle sitting on that. But he didn't want me climbing up on there just to not spook him. And we thought they'd come in this little wash to my right and probably be about a 350-yard shot, 400-yard shot, depending where they come. There was 5 of them, 2 really, really good ones, and then the other 3 were all okay. I would have been happy with any of them at that point, or at any point. I mean, I've never killed an ibex, so I was happy with whatever. So instead of going to the right like we thought they were, they started coming back left, pushing through this snowfield, got out into an open, and we knew, okay, there's your shot. So I hopped up on the rock, got prone on the bipod, 100% comfortable, ranged it, dialed the correction. They were moving a little faster. Like, I felt like it could have been a leisurely shot, but it kind of got rushed because they were exiting screen left pretty quick. Like,
oh man,
not running, but they were just feeding out.
Yep.
And if I would have thought ahead of time, I would have done some. Like I said, I'm not going to lie to you guys. I've missed shots in the past, and I usually let them go by me. This shot has haunted me for 45 days, however it's been. There's been a lot of 2 and 3 in the morning where I wake up and think about this. And I can give you any excuse you want because I have them all. I've come up with every one of them. But the fact is, I got prone on the bipod. Everything felt great, and I just missed the shot. What happened is I corrected. I think the correction was fine. I held low for some reason when I should have just held center body and trusted that the bullet, if it was a little higher or a little low, was probably going to hit him. But when I shot, he fell. He rolled, not just fell. He rolled down the hill. And so I got on, and the guide was yelling, shoot, shoot, shoot again, but he hauled butt, and he didn't have much of a window to get out of the scene, and he was behind the rock. I still felt, well, he tumbled at the shot. It must have hit him. And then the other guy up high could see him going up canyon, and 2 of them went that way, and one of them was the one that I shot at. But I still thought, I had to have hit him. And we went up there, no blood, no hair. There was snow there, so we would have seen if it was an impact. And we think what was happening, he was on a steep, steep hill, and I'm sure I just shot below him. The rocks and the snow scared him enough that he just tripped and tumbled and fell. So that, that's my sad story. And I think I just should have held center body or center mass on the shoulder horizontally and trust an inch either way would have done it. But I held on the heart, thinking the bullet's going to go exactly where I wanted it to go, and I just hit low. That's what I've come up with in my early morning hours.
It's heartbreaking. So
sure.
I mean, we're all there together. I don't know where David was. I don't know where Craig was. I don't know where Ryan was. None of us. I mean, maybe David and Craig might have been in the same spots, but you never know. But you know that the terrain you're in is pretty rugged and steep, and it's just hard to get there. So when we hear this, it's
Neil,
go ahead, Craig.
Neil, you showed me the face that you went up, and I can assure you I did not go up that face.
Yeah.
I promise you.
I'm surprised I went up
I
that.
did not, but
yeah, it's just heartbreaking when you hear that one of your friends has done this, amazing hike to get into position, and it didn't go the way of the hunter, unfortunately. And now the other part of this is, so now you get to go every other day, and you get to go on a half day when everybody else is packing their luggage. And David earned every bit of whatever he got out of Tajikistan. Yeah. I promise you, because that man climbed.
Well, he did. No, David really worked his tail off for it, but the weather was against us. We had a lot of low clouds and a lot of problems with visibility, which happens in the mountains anywhere, but it just kind of went on. And when one valley was clear, another one was wide open, and so there was some luck involved. You really don't expect a hunt like this for ibex to come down to just one opportunity, but but sometimes
Yeah,
it
it
just
does.
does.
Yeah, and we kind of always all had about one real opportunity.
Yeah.
Again, like I said, I saw the Ibex on day whatever it was 3 for half a second, and we sat on him. But Neil, you hunted the same Ibex.
I didn't look through a scope at an Ibex until when I shot the one I shot.
Wow.
You know, I mean,
Yeah, we were all kind of that way. Like it wasn't multiple opportunities. This wasn't an antelope hunt where it's targets of opportunity.
Yeah.
It was. I had an opportunity, and I got to hunt another day and a half. I saw on that actually while we were stalking that Ibex, I didn't bring it up, but in that snow we saw fresh bear tracks, like fresh that morning coming downhill. So we just missed him. He came down the hill and we went up the hill. On the last day, I hunted for half a day. And sat there, and I had a wolf at like 30 yards. I would have been more than happy to shoot that wolf at that point, but we also were surrounded. We were surrounded by ibex that day. We had a lot of ibex that we were trying to get to, so the guides did not want me to shoot a wolf.
Yeah.
But yeah, to see a wolf and to see bear tracks in Central Asia and Tajikistan with some of the nicest people you'll ever meet,
Yeah.
50 yards from Afghanistan border. I mean, I'm a kid like you guys. I'm a kid from Nebraska. Craig's a kid from Kansas. It's unbelievable we get to do what we get to do. We lead a blessed life, and if I have to miss an ibex to lead this life, I'm okay with that.
Well, and that's great to hear that. Yeah, it didn't go the way of the hunter on that particular part of the hunt, but there's way more in the experience of a trip like this than just coming home with an ibex. Would we have loved to? Yeah, absolutely. That's why you're there. But there was a lot of other things, it sounds like, hearing you guys talk, that made this such an enriching experience, and saved Neil's for last year. Neil, you were successful, and I've heard this recount, and I saw the video post shot. So
Yeah.
walk us through the Neil Davies adventure of laying down a Mid-Asian Ibex.
and I looked through my notes. It was day 4, David. So
Okay.
yeah, and then Ryan shot his on day 5. But
That's what I was thinking. Then I had,
and it was just, it was, like I said, it was an enriching experience. And part of what makes international hunting amazing, it's obviously hunting, but it's the traveling and the people and the culture and what you get exposed to. Kind of didn't know what we were getting ourselves into. Jason Hornady had been over there, and he gave us some info, and we'd seen some of the photography that Byron had taken. And I have to tell you that this is one heck of a scenic backdrop for everything. It's a stunning place. When I call it Middle Earth, it's much like scenes from Lord of the Rings. I mean, it's incredible. Steep, rugged stuff. But on the day that I ended up killing mine, we'd gone up the riverbed the day before, this big boulder-strewn riverbed. We'd seen a few ibex low down, and it was interesting because we were kind of sneaking around through this riverbed because they might come down to get water. And as we were moving along, you hear click, 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 rock comes down, right? Well, there's gravity, right? There's only a couple reasons why rocks come off mountains, but there was a couple ibex that were kind of skirting along through this little opening in the rocks. So we saw them. Then we moved on up ahead where Odile, the head guide, kind of thought there'd be some ibex up in this giant bowl. It was stunning, beautiful. The sky had opened up. It was blue skies, big white clouds, and just these sheer rock faces. And that's when I guess we didn't spot anything. The guide spotted them. Was these 2 really magnificent ibex that were sitting there face to face, like must have been breathing on each other, which was very interesting. And then a bunch of other subordinate ibex and some of the females. And that was when they were 1,300 yards away, super steep angle. The only way to get to them was basically climb up shale, which isn't going to happen. So the plan was now we have a discussion. Like, hey, I think tomorrow we can get to these ibex, but Odile says it's going to be steep. And now he's talking to me through Alex, the translator, and that's another subject which I'll touch on in just a second. But Alex is a great guy. He works for Profi Hunt, and he hunted at one point in time with I think all of us. Really good guy. So he's communicating with me, and he's telling me I've taken one other hunter up this side of the thing. I'm like, huh, okay, sure, why not? We're in Tajikistan,
Yeah, what are you gonna do?
If I die in Tajikistan going after Mid-Asian Ibex, that's an honorable death. So we come back out of this place in the dark over these boulders and stuff, have dinner with everybody. And then the next morning we get after it. So it's rock face. It wasn't hiking. It was climbing. It's hands and feet. But again, you'd be surprised what you're capable of. And the guides are there to make sure you do not hurt yourself. That's maybe overly cautious with you, always grabbing onto you and things. It's like, hey, you know,
I got it.
Yeah, I got this. But there was times when I'm glad they grabbed a hold of me. So yeah, but yeah, you climb up these steep rock faces, and then you get to another part which is kind of scree and straight vertical. And you've also gone up an atmosphere, so you start at 3 and you end up at 6, so you're up an entire atmosphere. So the air gets thinner as you get up there. And yeah, it's just straight up, slowly, slowly, slowly. And we should probably talk about the gear at some point too. But having walking stick, having trekking poles, all these things are definite things you need to have with you. And the stick I had a stick, and the stick worked great because the guide can hold on to the front of the stick, you can hold on to the back, or vice versa. If he falls, I can have something to hold him, and the same, because we're rock climbing. I mean, you should probably have the stuff we were doing. You wouldn't have been wrong to have been tied off to one another.
Oh wow!
So 6 hours of this, we get to the top of the ridge. Now we have to traverse the top of the hill. And that's when we started to encounter snow. And just like David said, it's just really screws with your mind because it's hard. So you'd be walking along, and then all of a sudden it'd give out on you, and you'd be up to your knee, or you'd be up to your crotch, and in some circumstances you'd be up to the middle of your chest. I mean, it was just, and you didn't know where that was. So you're kind of walking along, poof, down you go. Now you got to climb out of this stuff, and it's like, are we ever going to get to wherever these things are? And 2 hours later after that, so now we're 8 hours deep into this thing, and we're finally in a position where we can see this bowl where these ibex had been the day before, set up for a shot, ultimately. So I'm a right-handed shooter, and the way that everything got set up, I'm shooting left-handed. It's okay. We can figure this out. But I was shooting off of a snowbank, so we had to we laid a jacket down just so I'd have something to lay my rifle on. And, of course, the ibex are bedded, not moving, yada, 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 as same experience for everybody. So you just sit there and wait them out for a while. I'm laying on snow, so you're freezing, you're wet, you're cold. It's just all part of the experience, And eventually they get up, and I'd done a bore alignment check, and I thought I was good, but there's a little bit of snow in front of me. So, all right, everything's good. I mean, I have the data on my phone from my Ford off, and I think he was like 398 or something like this, close to 400. I still have all the data on there. And all right, everybody ready? Yep, we're ready. Pull the trigger. Meter high. I was like, what? What is going on here? So anyway, and just like Craig, he got one bullet in him at one point, and he ended up, I shot at him 4 times. Once we recovered him, he had 3 bullet holes in him. So I may have hit the snow. There was a little snow in front of me, which I may have hit, in which, if that happens. But again, it's good to be a rifleman. It's good to be a shooter and know your way around your rifle, because now I go down in power and magnification, find the ibex, which again looks like a rock. So I find the ibex, and now it's 1, 2, and then finally that last one, and he just topples down the hill. So this is part of the fun part of my story is when we were in Istanbul, as typical on a lot of these international trips, you buy some cigarettes for the guides. Now, it's a Muslim country. It's a very Muslim country, but I don't know how to explain it right. They smoke. They may drink a little bit. It's not a fundamentalist country like that.
Okay.
So the guides smoke a lot every time you stop, cigarettes. But anyway, so I bought cigarettes in Istanbul to bring to the guides, and I handed them cigarettes early on in the hunt, and then every time we'd stop, they're very gracious. They'd always offer me a cigarette first, and I said, no thanks. I don't smoke. Blah blah blah. Well, finally they wore me down toward the middle of the hunt. And they're like, cigarette? And I was like, you know what? I tell you what, I will have a cigarette if we shoot a big ibex. So the rest of my story is boom, whop, ibex falls down the hill, hoots and hollers, cigarette, right away.
Very
cigarette.
Gracious.
So yeah, so we had right then and there, right with the gun in position, we have a victory cigarette.
Yeah,
and I don't smoke, and kids don't smoke. It's a bad habit, but that was a fun deal. So yeah. And then we had to get over to the ibex as well. Again, through more snow. Just a difficult place, but we went straight down scree, which if you've never hunted in scree, it's quite easy to get down scree. You just hold the stick behind you and you just kind of ski your way down.
Yeah, it's like rappelling.
Yeah.
Lead hand, guide hand, rear hand, brake hand.
Exactly.
Awesome. So you guys had this awesome experience, and 3 out of 4 get good-looking Ibex rams. Now, once you get a ram on the ground, how do you get that home, not back to camp? What can you do, or what's the process of getting that processed and handled and shipped back to you in the U.S.? Because I'm guessing you want to bring that home.
Yeah. So Craig should take this one because Craig has done this
a few times,
a couple hundred more times than David and I. So,
Craig, what's that look like when you're in Tajikistan? I don't know what the infrastructure's like. How do you orchestrate getting your trophy home to you?
Well, the meat all came down the mountain, and the villagers are happy to have it.
Good.
And they served. We had a couple of meals
Yep.
of Ibex in camp.
Just delicious,
and,
by
you
the
know,
way.
everybody
Yeah.
says, everybody says goat's not very good. Ibex is really pretty darn good. It's certainly better than our Rocky Mountain goat as table fare, and that's not as bad as people say it is. That's great. They'll take the skin. They'll do the skinning on the mountain to reduce the weight that's coming down the mountain. And they'll boil out the skull in camp, and then that's part of what the outfitter does. Is well, they certainly haven't been shipped yet, but in due time we'll receive the salted and dried skins and the horns, and then hopefully next time we have this chat, maybe that Ibex will be over my head instead of that buffalo.
Awesome. So the outfitter helped orchestrate the whole trophy care and.
So on a lot of the international trips, you're dealing primarily with an outfitter at first. So you either go meet them at a Dallas Safari Club or Safari Club International or one of the other trade shows a lot of times, or you can just book it through the internet. But you want to deal with a reputable outfitter, and they have a booking agent. Let's call those people a booking agent. So you deal with them, and then they have a variety of different outfitters throughout the world. So the folks we hunted with in Tajikistan, they were affiliated with Profi Hunt for this particular event. So it's established. You know, the booking agent has done the investigation or the initial survey on that outfitter to make sure everything's good and that they wouldn't be wrong to recommend hunters go with this particular outfitter.
Okay.
So they've done a lot of that legwork for the international hunter. Part of that will also be the trophy prep and all these things. So yes, they will skin the animal, boil the head. Typically, you make a determination what you want to do, and we covered this on another podcast where we talked about hunting in Africa, where you need to have a good idea about what you want to do with the animal, because otherwise you're going to be faced with a decision on a mountain, full body mount, shoulder mount. What do you want to do here?
Yeah.
So have that.
And you're not of the right mind at that moment.
Yeah, you're not. You are definitely
you're
not.
not.
So you want to have that planned out ahead of time because, I mean, the way you skin out an animal for a full body mount is different than how you do a cape. So that all takes place there on the mountain, and they prepare the animal for you, and then they bring it down like the meat comes down in this case, and we ate Ibex, which is fantastic. I'm happy it was delicious. But then the trophy gets prepped. They deal with somebody there in Tajikistan or whatever country you're in to certify that the animal has been dipped and packed and free of insects and any of this stuff. And then you work with the transporter who then ships it to the United States via a broker typically that goes through the United States Customs. And then from there it ships to your taxidermist, and then you'll see it in a year or two.
Fantastic. Because, obviously you want to make sure all the meat's getting used wherever you can. And then, of course, you book a trip like this, you want to have this thing to remember on your wall, I think. So that's neat that and it stands to reason that they would orchestrate this event for you to help make it as easy as possible to get your trophy back home into a taxidermist. Yeah.
And I mean, that's how it works, and it's done like that. If you work with a reputable booking agent, one of the major folks that, again, is usually showcasing their services at one of the major trade shows, again, Dallas Safari Club, SCI, some of the other ones, Houston, those folks, and Craig can attest to this. Don't go on a hunt try to go on a hunt with somebody that's been recommended by somebody you know. Craig actually, Craig, you may as well put a plug in here, but Craig does recommendations for different booking agents and outfitters.
And for a guy that's been on hunts all over the world, hundreds of hunts all over the world, his word would carry some weight.
Yes. This is your turn, Craig. What's your plug?
No, and I know the Profi Hunt folks. I've hunted with them before. They they do a great job. And of course, their specialty is Asian hunting. They have some hunts in Africa and elsewhere, but they are Central Asia specialists, and they did a great job. We had Alex Petroshenko was with us from their office, and we call him an interpreter, but he is really a mountain guide in his own right, and he was invaluable. The days that he was with each of them, he was tremendously helpful. And now he didn't shirk his duties. I think he was there when every ibex was taken, and so he had a tougher hunt really than any of the rest of us. But Alex was a great guy and did a great job. And the local outfit is M. Syed and the Alayuro family, and they just have done a great job with this area. It's the management that they have in this area is fantastic. And the patriarch of the Mularayarov family started it clear back in 1993. He was a local hunter, and they were eating ibex and Bukaran markhor on a regular basis. And he decided, there's less and less, and we need to do something about this. So he really started protecting the area, and it turned into a grassroots conservancy that has done a fantastic job. There's now 800 markhor in this area, and that's just about half the world's total of Bukaran markhor.
And that and their story is a fantastic showcase of how hunting funds conservation.
Yeah, we should talk about that because that's a huge part of this puzzle.
Leopards. I didn't know much about snow leopards until I went on this trip. I've seen them on National Geographic. I figured there's like 3 of them left in the world. And guess what? They've got 10 to 12 just in their hunting area alone. We would find deadheads. We'd find dead markhor up on the mountain. They had several in the camp. So a markhor, just for everybody's perspective, I think to go hunt a markhor is about $150,000 to $170,000. So that is a very expensive hunt, but that's because they're very limited. But the monies that are attained from those hunts go back to fund conservation efforts in many different ways, not only directly to markhor habitat preservation and things like this, but also in giving back to the communities where these markhor exist, because now there's incentive for people to keep them alive and not eat them or poach them or do whatever with them. So the family that's operating this conservancy there, they've given a bunch of monies back to the local communities for things like housing, water projects, all this stuff. And that's all derived from hunting. It's from nothing else but hunting.
And they get about 3 markhor permits per year. It varies from year to year depending on the count. And of course, the snow leopards are taking more and more because there's more snow leopards, but there's more markhor. And goats can be very prolific if left alone. But they get about 3 permits per year for markhor, and that really supports the entire village, and really more than one entire village. This is the best thing that's ever happened in that part of Tajikistan.
And you can look across the river and you see Afghanistan, and it's desolate, and it's 50 to 60 years behind in progress. On the Tajik side, it's a brand new road, goes all the way through the valley. On the Tajik side, it is a trail, which motorcycles and Afghan side. Yeah, you're right. Sorry. Is just a trail over there, and no markhor, no nothing. Whereas on the Tajik side, you've got Mid-Asian Ibex, you've got markhor, you've got Eurasian brown bear, wolves, wild boar, rabbits, and lots of
porcupine.
Yeah, porcupine. And what was the bird? There was lots of
and lots of chucker partridge.
Yeah.
And
tons of.
While you guys were messing around up in those wimpy little hills for your ibex, and I had mine in camp. I went and climbed one day for a wild boar, and we saw one, didn't get one, and we made another climb because somebody had seen a wolf go up into the rocks, and we made a ridiculous climb. And I actually saw him. He was at 1,200 yards, which is a little bit out of my range.
That's poke for anybody.
We went up after a wolf, and we actually saw him.
Yeah, I think that's the cool story is the conservation there. I think we all know that. We know that it's how Africa is run. That's why there's so much wildlife in a lot of places in Africa, because hunters conserve it. I didn't realize about Tajikistan until we got back and started doing some research about that family, the Imseod Conservancy. That's a well-known conservancy. Just last week in The Guardian, which is about the most anti-hunting newspaper in the world, had a pro-hunting article about and it mentioned our hunting conservancy because they are at the forefront of that, and because of the snow leopard. They want to save the snow leopard, but the fact that there's snow leopard there is because $100 are coming in to save the markhor, to save the ibex. And like you said, Neil, we're 50 to 100 yards from the Afghan border, right across the river, and my guys were telling me no markhor over there, no ibex over there, none, because it's all been eaten by the locals over there. Yeah. And on the Tajik side, they know the dollar value, so they don't. They might take one or two if they're hungry, I'm sure, but they have lots of, sheep and everything else too. So
wow,
it's the conservation story there blew me away, and then the fact that we didn't know it till we got back, or at least I didn't.
Yeah, just to hear people say that and I've got a video on my phone that Ayub sent me of a snow leopard, which is crazy. Like I didn't, like I said, I thought there were 6 of them or 3 of them in the world, but no, there's a whole bunch.
Wow,
but that's because they're conserved and these people are doing the right thing.
Well, that's an awesome story, an awesome hunt, an awesome experience. Now on the tail end of this here, what did we miss? What were some points that I didn't prompt you guys to talk about that maybe you want to get the listener to listen in on? And did we miss anything?
I think we touched on it a little bit, but I think I always try to emphasize this to a lot of folks. A lot of guys will save up their whole life to go on an elk hunt or a mule deer hunt. And God bless them, I love hunting mule deer and elk as much as the next guy, but those hunts are getting expensive. $12,000, $15,000 for a premier elk hunt. Mule deer hunts are getting into the $10,000 range, and they're very cool hunts. Or you can spend the same amount of money or less than 10 grand to go to another part of the world to experience this culture, to climb mountains you never dreamed of climbing or that you could climb, and to have a truly life-changing experience in another part of the world that I think sometimes as Americans we downplay it. Like, why do I want to go to a third world country and suffer a little bit? And because it will change your life. And that's the emphasis I want. Anybody can do this. And Africa's the same way. Africa's a more affordable adventure than a lot of hunts that people can do here in the US. And I don't know that people realize that because they're afraid of the long flight, or they're afraid of handing their passport to someone they don't know in the dark of night in Dushanbe, Tajikistan. Yeah. I get it. That's a little bit of hesitation there, but man, just be adventurous, be brave, step out your door and experience this world. That to me, that's what adventure hunting and international hunting is all about. Yeah, I get to pull the trigger on a pretty cool animal, and sometimes I get to hit them, but it's all about that. Everything else about that. I'll never forget just sitting around a campfire with a bunch of guys that don't speak my language, and I don't speak their language, and we're sharing, sausages and this delicious bread, and just laughing and joking about we're not even sure what, because none of us speak the language, but having a good time. I mean, that's really for me. I always try to emphasize that to people, like, I could never go to Tajikistan and hunt ibex. And you know what? I bet you can if you want it bad enough. Yep,
that's really well said, David. That's from the guy that didn't get to bring home the animal, still has that whole shift in perspective and that appreciation of the culture and the experience. That says a lot to how truly enriching that type of event would be, to go on that huge expedition, as Craig put it.
Well, the ibex is really one of the great unsung heroes in the mountain hunting world. There was a time back in the 1920s when the ibex was considered a superior animal to any wild sheep. But now today we have this weird cult of sheep hunting, but ibex are hunted in the same mountain and with the same guides, with the same equipment, and in many cases the country's tougher because goat country starts where sheep country stops. But the ibex is just so available, and the Mid-Asian Ibex is really huntable today for less than the cost of now it is obviously there's no do-it-yourself opportunities. You're going to have to go through an outfitter, but failing a do-it-yourself opportunity, a Mid-Asian Ibex hunt is really much less than the average cost for a Rocky Mountain goat hunt here in North America. And what a marvelous adventure and a chance to see some different country and see some mountains that you might never have dreamed of, and the hunt is a fraction of the cost of any guided sheep hunt here in North America.
Wow. Yep. Neil, what else? How do you want to summarize this here?
Ditto.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the truth. We're blessed to do what we do. And Craig has been everywhere and all over the place and done it for several decades. So he's seen things change in that time. But a trip to Mid-Asia, it's a strange place, and when you get there, you have to go, holy cow, I'm no longer in Kansas or Iowa or wherever. But once you get there and you meet these people, and that's always what it's about. It's the people, it's the terrain, it's the culture. And to me, the people that we dealt with, especially all the guides, they are, number one, very tough, but yet gracious, hospitable, kind, accommodating, fantastic people. It'd be easy to have a preconceived notion of what you may encounter when you meet people in different parts of the world. But let me tell you, those things don't always hold true. And these were fantastic folks. Food was great, and just accommodating is probably the biggest thing I could tell you. And once you have an experience with these people, they enrich your life. Mm-hmm. That's what happens, and you have a deeper appreciation for their lifestyle and for the experience that they just enabled for you. So, I guess that's the biggest takeaway for me was honestly the people and how they were and what they did to make sure that we were successful.
That's really well said. I can't say enough how awesome it is to hear these experiences recounted because they sound, and I've said it before, like they would really change the lens that you view the world through. With you get to see the different parts of the country and the different people and the different food that they eat and their way of life, and then you come back to America to what your quote unquote normal is, and it really would change. I think how you view things on your day to day.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Everywhere around the world, you meet some of the happiest people I've ever met are people that live in villages in some remote part of the world that have maybe one set of clothes, but they are some of the happiest people I've ever met.
Simplicity, I suppose.
Yeah.
Well, Craig, David, is there anything else that you want to put on the back end of this podcast before we wrap it up?
I just want to say thanks to Neil and Ryan for having me along on the adventure, and Neil for calling my bluff and getting me to say yes. And like I said, it's just I'm a kid who grew up on a dirt farm in Nebraska. I still live in a dirt farm in Nebraska, and to be able to do this I'm just a blessed individual, and I want to say thanks to Neil and Ryan for everybody making it happen, and Seth thanks for having me on too. I'd love to talk about it. Like I said, I've relived this on every day for 2 months.
Well, and likewise, Neil, thanks so much to Hornady and Leica and Forlo. It was a wonderful adventure, and quite honestly, I was scared to death when you said, "Oh, by the way, your draft number came up. You got to go." And I said, "I don't know if I should be doing this, but I'm sure glad I did. It was a wonderful trip, and it was a great adventure."
Yeah, it was a great adventure, and it's a privilege being able to spend time with all of you guys. We had a good time. The times when we were in camp together and interacting with all the folks, we had a good time. It was a blast, but it was a privilege. Thanks for coming.
That is definitely what I like to hear, guys. Thanks for sharing all those experiences. Everybody else out there in podcast land, I hope you enjoyed this one. I know I certainly did, and we will catch you on the next one.